recognize me, I'm Bob Sinclair, and this is Milt Platt. Used to jump out of airplanes with us. Okay, the reason we're making this tape is to explain to Jim Hughes and some of you other snibblers that the 16 millimeter tape is all gone. Tom Sanders, a pre-fall photographer, and myself spent 2 weeks going through it, and we threw out about 50,000 feet. The remaining stuff is being reprocessed and is going into a stock footage house. If we ever sell it for any reason at all, rent it, Tom and I are going to split the money. We will have some copies of some things like the commercials, Johnny Carson's jump, Julie Newmar, maybe the Air Force training film, Eden Ryle, things like that. Anything I get a copy of, you will be able to get a copy of. It'll probably cost you the price of getting a copy. Okay, so what Milt and I are going to do today is I've assembled 3 scrapbooks, just of miscellaneous stuff we acquired over the period of years, and we're going to videotape each one. Now, it will not be close enough you can read your name, but I have a pointer here. I'm going to point to the pictures there, and if you really snivel, if you really need the printed copy, I suppose I could tear the books apart and Xerox something. Milt Platt, you want to talk to the old jumpers?
Won't do me any good. I'm just a slave doing what I'm told, as always, working under Bob Sinclair. Thank you very much.
Okay. We have 3 of these scrapbooks. Book number 1 is California, Paraventures and Parachuting Associates, and this is our old logo. I never thought too much of it, but Dave Burt designed it. Really thought it was tremendous. And this is the back patches we used to wear on our jumpsuits. Okay, what this is company-generated propaganda. It's a listing of the various projects we worked on over a 15-year period. We shot approximately 50 television commercials and a lot for different shows and some features, and did some test work for the aerospace industry. Actually, I have 3 more pages like this. These are individual lists. This is information on the school, and so we're not going to spend a lot of time on these pages. If somebody really wanted a detailed listing of this, I could tear these books down in Xerox individual pages, but I hope I don't have to do that. So we're going to skip the other 4 pages. The print's too small to read. Just tell your girlfriend that you took part in all types of activities. She'll believe that, I'm sure. Okay, this was our company offices when we first started. 1960 in Hollywood Boulevard. This was our company offices, and this particular van was one of my vehicles I had from my parachute school, and we graduated from there over to Cole Street, where we had all our own facilities. We had film rooms and a parachute loft and everything. This was Sylvia Globe, our office manager. By the time we were jumping ripcord in 1960, we had about a dozen people, probably about 6 or 7 of them full-time and the rest part-time. This is Dave Burt, one of my partners. He is dead now. He was killed in an auto accident. He was in a coma for 2 years before he died. He invented parascuba, and that was back a long time ago. Here's the very first parascuba with small tanks. He went around to talk to all the military services, and they said, "We are not interested. We have no requirement." Now every outfit except possibly the Coast Guard has their own parascuba people. This is one more page of the services. We had photography and custom parachute law, and equipment rental, and consulting for technical consultants, and lectures, and training programs, demonstration jumps, and engineering development, different types of parachute deal. And this is me jumping up in the Kern River for an early thing we did for a keen gold sucking little gold dredge thing, jumping up in the Kern River. In 1960, 61 actually, we started the series Ripcord. This is Ken Curtis, who was one of our heroes, and Bud Pinnell was the other hero. Ken just died a couple months ago up around Bakersfield, or Fresno. He was actually 75 years old. This was me jumping with a French poodle by the name of Dijon. I made several jumps with him. Their ears are very sensitive. After a couple jumps, wouldn't even get close to me. And this is Dave and Jim jumping a Grumman goose. And I put a lot of stuff in my book just because they spelled my name correctly. For old days, Bud Keith was a hero, obviously, jumping with just a backpack. Well, he used to hide the reserves and seat cushions everywhere you could imagine. I assume he had a reserve on. And me with a 16 millimeter camera and lantern batteries. And Vern Williams is this particular case, Dr. Gossett, who actually gets thrown out of the airplane accidentally. He has a hidden parachute. And Paul Gustine, the pilot, who is dead. This was Gary Patmore on some preliminary tests on the hidden parachute concept. And this was Carl Beamy. She died on a base jump a while ago. He's taking still pictures of our hidden parachute. Mickey Mouse bat wings. You can see Bud's wearing them there. I jumped them also. And it was in the plot for Ripcord. And of course I'm carrying the 16mm camera again. And in this case Vern Williams is the hero. And I don't remember exactly. I suppose somebody had to save somebody for some reason. This sequence was supposed to be an aerial pickup, and actually I designed one and I was going to be picked up, but they ground both Howards we had at Elsinore that particular weekend, and we had to bring one in from up north, and so we faked it. We didn't have time to work up the system. What we did, we put a couple poles on top of the glider hanger, put a hook up, and he come by and we just snatched the dummy, and they lowered me out of the airplane, and we reversed the film, and it looked like I was winched up in. There's a note that I was dubbing for Burt Reynolds, and this was 30 years ago. And here's Bud Kiesel wearing student gear just on an opening. This is me as a student on a Ripcord episode, and I'm hung up on a static line like some students are wont to do, and the hero Dave Burt is coming down to save me. Procedure being to cut my static line and then activate my reserve parachute. To execute this system, we had Jim Hall in the door, and the whole mechanisms on a release with a large parachute. At any given time, he could have cut us loose, and we could have landed on a bigger parachute. And we did this up about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, so we had lots of altitude, lots of room for safety. Pittsburgh, somebody must have sent it in, but This Week magazine, of course, got nationwide. And this was Janet Lake. She was in the pilot film for Ripcord with us, and she made probably a dozen jumps. And this is me adjusting her harness. Good thing they had the picture cropped down because I had a cast on my leg from breaking it at an air show. And this is Bud Kiesel, and just regular propaganda that we shot for the TV series. Some of the features we shot, we don't have too much film coverage of features. Usually you're busy working, you don't get pictures. This is Milt Platt, and this is me jumping for a show called The Scavengers. And we shot it up, where was that, Milt Platt?
Outside of Pear Blossom.
Outside of Pear Blossom. And we had wigs on. We had throwaway reserves. You can see they have pilot chutes on. After you open, you throw them away because they're emergency jumps. You're not supposed to be wearing reserves. And this is one of two shows we shot with Sandy Duncan, The Star-Spangled Girl and The Girl Most Likely, or something like that. I've forgotten exactly. From Gypsy Moths. We did not shoot to feature Gypsy Moths. We started out, but we could not work with Frankenheimer. I worked up all the stunts, and this is a case of Jim Hughes and myself going up to film a banner with Gypsy Moths on it. I kept my studio pass from MGM just because I did spend 3 weeks working on the show. Sniveling Jim Hughes and myself, technical directing on a show called The Green Berets with John Wayne on the Fulton pickup system. In the show, they picked up a Charlie Colonel, who in reality was a captain in U.S. Army paratroopers, and we put this balloon up in Warner Brothers' backyard. Now, theoretically, you're supposed to have a permit to put a balloon up more than about 20 feet, but we ran that thing up 700 feet, and nobody said anything. We got it back down. Okay, this show I did not participate in. Our company did, and it was some footage for In Harm's Way, shot quite a few years ago. I was goofing off in Alaska, and I wasn't going to come back from Alaska to make one static line jump. This is Deke Sonderson, who's now in the balloon. Roy Feynman was killed in Vietnam, and this is, I think, Jim Render. And this was actually a civilian airplane, and they painted one side of it with watercolor, and J. Barry Heron doing the camera work from the AT-6. Commercials, we shot approximately 50 of them over a 15-year period. The number is deceiving. Some of them, of course, you just sell stock footage, and others you have part stock footage, and some live jumps, others you have all live jumps. This was the first one we shot, and this was a Kodak Instamatic camera, and it came out in 1963, and we got a Clio for it. It was shown for the first time during the Academy Awards, and it went over pretty well. This was the second Kodak commercial. This was an Instamatic movie camera, and we shot it 5 years after the first one down in the Bahamas with myself and Jim Hughes as the heroes and Milt Platt doing most of the camera work. And I made a water jump in there and actually put it in a plastic bag and kept shooting underwater. And this is probably the worst commercial we ever shot. It was Carol Penrod putting her hair up in curlers in free fall. We shot at wide angle with me hanging on to her. Every time she break one, I would hand her another one out of frame. And of course, seeing she was not watching the ground and I was not watching the ground, I kept an automatic opener on it. Here we shot in 1966, and it's with Atlas tires. We hoisted tires up to 6,000 feet with a helicopter. And I jumped from another helicopter and then waded among them trying to film them without getting run over. For the close-up shots, we put 70 pounds of lead in a tire. We had a sign in it to begin with, but it would chase me and I would chase it, so we took the sign out. And of course, here's myself and Milt Platt and Jim Hughes. And some of these other commercials I don't really recognize. Here's Bobby Johnson, Scratch Garrison, Clarice Garrison, George Speakman, and myself. Tiger 7 and Patty Crescito. And after a while, they all blend together. More commercials. This one here is the man from Glad on a simulator. We put background clouds behind them and manipulate them with a Ritter wind machine. And here's Roy Fryman and Gary Patmore and myself going up on some kind of commercial. And these girls here were shooting a shoe commercial. This was up to Pope Valley, and it was wet in the ground. I got so wet and muddy they put a blanket up between me and them so I wouldn't get them muddy. And this is Milt Platt on a simulator for the Mars Bars commercial. And Sandy Ackerman and Patty and Clarice out in the desert on another commercial. In this case, I'm jumping a helicopter. I don't remember which project it is, but obviously Milt Platt's involved. And it's shot at the Taft. I can see by the oil wells in the background. Here's Dave Burt. Here's Bobby Johnson working on cameras on the ground. Here's Pepsi Cola. This was shot in 1970. And Clarice. Is that you, Milt Platt?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now this one here was on a billboard next to my school in Hollywood. And we shot the thing as a still, but of course they airbrushed the hair going out at an angle. And really makes it look phony. A commercial for Robert Burns Cigars, and in this case I am doubling for a pretty famous stuntman himself, Jock Mahoney. And I'm wearing kilts, and I let my hair grow long for this particular shot. I had a hidden parachute that I did use. There's about 3 or 4 pages of this particular commercial. Here's the hidden parachute I built, and you pull a center pull, it pulls all 4 pins. And here I am making the transfer from a PT-22 to a 119. In the movie, it's the other way around. I come down and get into the cockpit. We tried it both ways. And Jim Hughes did some of the test work with us, checking out the ladder. For instance, Jim Hughes checking out the ladder for our commercial. This particular steerman had the original 220 Continental on it, so we couldn't get higher than about 3,000 feet off the ground. And so he was checking out the ladder to see how much drag we had. In retrospect, we would put the experimental sign and the tripwire on the other side of the airplane. That trip line gave the pilot the capability of dropping the whole ladder if we ran into real problems, so he wouldn't have to land with us out there. This is the last page on that particular commercial. It's put in by popular demand because of the leg art, of course, but it gives you the details of how we constructed the ladder. The ladder rungs were made of pipe and they were filled with lead, so they would hang rather vertically. The aircraft is Orion, a PT-22. They're fun airplanes. MG commercial. We dropped 2 of them. The chute did not work on the first one. We have about 4 pages here. This is a storyboard showing actually the sequence, and these pictures are taken from the commercial. When the first one went in, we had, here's 3 cameras right on that mount. We lost approximately 5 cameras. This was down at my parachute school. We ran a preliminary test and dropped one from 5 feet. and photographed at very slow motion to see where all the stress and strains were. And this is the working crew part of it. Here's old Dirty Ed, Bill Edwards, Dave Burt, Jack Johnson, who is now from Washington, and myself. And this is what the MG looked like before the drop with a 100-foot parachute. Went by my parachute school. My parachute school is behind this fence, and here's the 100-foot parachute laid out. Dick Grenand, and I can't see who the other jumper is packing. Scratch Garrison probably, and putting hesitator lines on it. We had reefing line cutters to slow up the opening, and some king-size line separators. And the bag, the canopy weighed, I don't know, probably 100 pounds. And we packed it all up right in front of the school. Okay, this is the operational sequence. Here's the parachute stretched out. The reefing line cutters cut the reefing line and the parachute in place. We painted these 12-foot signs on the side of the parachute. The aircraft was a Caribou, and we rented it from Intermountain Aviation over Marana, which everybody in the world knew was CIA. And this is an interesting little spotting window in the side, mounted vertically, so you can stick your head right out and look straight down. It was a canopy off a mini Mustang. Here's the MG loaded into the aircraft. Bill Edwards, can't tell who the other jumpers are. Okay, here is the MG drop. Here's can't tell which one. The camera plane alongside, and me on a 24-foot Paracommander alongside of the 100-foot MG. And this is a successful one. It landed beautifully. I had to wait a year, but I bought it. But I beat the hell out of it and finally sold it for parts. Here's what the one looked like on El Mirage dry lake that didn't work. It whistled in from 7,500 feet, and fortunately it hit flat and didn't damage the parachute too much. We had to repair it and use it on the other MG. Here's the pallet, and here's what the MG looked like when we turned the thing over. Actually, there was one tire that didn't get flat, but that was about the only thing. Where Jack Johnson built up the supports right here in the engine there, but the only thing that really penetrated into the dry lake bed. Here's that one tire that did not deflate. We shot 2 Japanese commercials. This one was for Mitsubishi television set, and the whole 6-man Japanese production crew wanted to jump, so Jack Johnson and myself ran them through my school. Here's Mod Squad, which isn't a commercial, but it's somehow snuck in here. Here's Gary Patmore, and of course Milt Flatt. Milt's more pictures than I am in my own book. And here's Ray Smith. He used to fly to Twin Beach at Elsinore. He's been dead for many years. Here's Dave Burt and myself working on camera gear for some show, and I don't really know, after a while they all blend together. And here you can see Mickey Mouse wings. We used to use in almost all cameras. This is a print commercial, and I'm quite sure we did not shoot this. We shot the motion picture, the regular TV commercial, but we shipped the canopies out to someplace in Texas. Now, Hunter Von Leer was our hero in the Budweiser commercial, and he thought this was over Elsinore, but it is not. But this is me after we built the canopy. We actually built 2 of them, and me jumping it on test jumps over Taft drop zone to make sure the thing wasn't going to blow up when we used it on the real show. Here's a couple more samples of the print-type commercials. This was George Speakman and Clarice Garrison, and we shot it up to Bishop at an elevation about 4,500 feet at the drop zone to get some clear air away from the smog. But after we turned all this footage in, they airbrushed everything. They changed the color of her boots, they changed the color of her jumpsuit, they airbrushed more hair in, they changed George Speakman's face. People ask me if I had anything to do with that commercial. I says, I never seen anything like that before. And this one was a Kawasaki program. I used a Kawasaki kind, and they gave me a bike, which I sold. Otherwise, I would have busted my butt. I should mention, when I was talking about the Honda commercials, the second Honda commercial we shot was Steve McQueen at Bonneville for Honda. Okay, we shot a variety of regular TV shows and series. These jumps here at the bottom we made for the television series 12 O'Clock High. This is Paul Burke, who was also one of my students we trained. Jim Hughes and I jumped him on a 4-line cut way back in those days. When we were making emergency type jumps, you see we wore 2 chest packs, and we'd throw one away and just come down on the other chest pack. The crew included Gary Patmore, I don't know who the short jumper is, and Jim Hall, and Ray Smith for the pilot. And this is some of the sequencing we did for I Love Lucy show. I doubled for Lucille Ball with a gold lame jumpsuit and things like that. I jumped a chute with a sign in it that said Carter's Unique Employment Agency. I had to spread the double L modification so wide it made a very unstable parachute. Slam me into the edge of the bowl with tacks would have killed a mere mortal. This is a special with the singer Robert Goulet, and this is called wire work. I would go up with the camera and shoot the jumpers, and then they match on stage with a backdrop and match the same footage I shot. This is Robert Goulet, and Robert Goulet up here, Kay Ballard and Bob Denver, who used to be Gilligan on Gilligan Island, and this is Dave Burt doing the technical directing on the show. This was a show we shot with Eden Ryle back in 1971 on Power of Positive Thinking. She runs seminars for salesmen and sales managers, and I assume she still peddles the film showing her jump, because people come out of the woodwork every year and say, I saw you on a film, and I say, yes, I know which one it was. We put her in a water jump only because my partner thought that we ought to. Here's Bill Edwards, who was Dirty Ed, who is the hero of the show, and I was doing the training and the jump mastering. The title of the shoot was You Pack Your Own Chute, and what it really amounts to is a gal backing herself in the corner using the analogy of making a parachute jump to overcome unnecessary uncertainty. She did a fine job, but was not the proper motivation for making a parachute jump. This was an NLS special, and we shot it with Jim Marshall, defensive end from Minnesota Vikings. He had several hundreds of jumps, but it had been quite a while since he had jumped. We got weathered out in Southern California, so we went over to Marana and used the facilities of Intermountain Aviation with a Hiller Porter with a hog trough jump step. Pretty lazy living. 23 years ago, 1968, July about the 5th, we trained and threw Johnny Carson off an airplane, and this is a accounting that I had written up for Parachutist magazine, and not much to say. I have about 6 pages of them here. Here is the program from the Tonight Show that I happened to be on, and Milt Platt and George Speakman were the photographers. They were also in the audience and on the show that night. This is shooting Johnny up. This is after we landed. Now, we had done that for about 7 years with Air Force people and other people. It was nothing brand new. Here's Johnny getting ready to go up to make his jump. George Speakman is closing the chute. You see the Mickey Mouse wings we have under our arms. We use them on almost all camera jumps. They still use them nowadays. In our system, those days, we used to hang on to them from the side with a single instructor. A better way is to have a simple instructor head-on where you're holding by both hands, and the student have bent elbows, almost impossible to screw them up. Okay, Johnny practicing some more exit off the Howard before we went up, and after he gets down, you can tell he's already made the jump. The chute's unpacked and he's grinning because the thing opened. And we overran the drop zone. We should have had a camera plane to film the exit, and we didn't, so Milt had his head stuck in the door, and we were kind of jammed up, so we got off late, landed over by Rome Hill, and Milt kept some extra film in the helmet camera, and so we got a good coverage of his landing. This was a thing we shot for, wow, what did we shoot it for? Anyways, Julie Newmar making her first parachute jump, American Sportsman that we shot it for. They had a unique way of filming. They had 3 distinct camera crews. So they have a master shot, overall shot, and then they had different points of view to shoot at the same time. And we had quite a crew there. J. Barry Heron doing some of the camera work. And put Barbara Roquemore out on a camera check with over 1,000 jumps. I put her on a static line, and Scratch Garrison helped with ground support. And it came out so well that we used it for a training film at my school. This was shot in '72, and we saw it so many times my instructors and myself couldn't bear to watch it any longer. This is Julie in the training harnesses where we taught them how to make turns. And not very complicated. We taught full rear risers to make stand-up landings. And you can still get a flare on them. Practicing landings, we jumped them into a sandbox from about 3 foot to get the landing attitude. Then we jump them about 4.5, 5 feet to simulate the landing force. And of course we had the mock-up there of the strut and the step for teaching like off Howards and Cessnas. And did our camera work on this. And this was Scott Ransom. He made a couple jumps back east, and he shot our third exit from the aircraft to get some stills for TV Guide, but he didn't tape his lens and bumped the lens setting, so we got no pictures for TV Guide. It was a fold boat thing, Avon boats, what it was, and we made a water jump off California. We had state law in those days, so to get away from state law, we had to jump 3 miles out. This is George Speakman and Jim Hughes loading up into the Twin Beach, and we had a motor and other accessories packed. And here goes the boat out of the beach. Okay, shot air to air, of course. Here's one of the jumpers going out, and here's one tumbling a little bit, another coming out the door. Bobby Johnson did not pack the motor right, and I did not check him like I was supposed to, so the motor went in, we had to paddle the thing. Here's the boat coming down. The canopy is a modified Air Force chute. It used to have guide surface pockets on. We cut those off, which made it about the equivalent of a 26-foot canopy, and then put these stabilizing slots every other go around it. Originally it was modified for a television, commercial dropping television sets. And here's the crew enjoying themselves on an outing here. Avon Red Shank is the name of the boat. Milt Platt, Jim Hughes, myself, George Speakman, and Bobby Johnson. Go into demo jumps and air shows. Kind of hard to divide the two. These particular jumps were made by Bob Herring and myself and Milt Platt and a place called Devonshire Downs in San Fernando Valley. It's an old oval racetrack, and in those days it had grass. It's now paved. It's part of the school system now. And I remember this particular jump because we came in, our shadows kicked up a rabbit. He thought we were hawks. He made 3 circles and went splitting right out through the middle of about 10,000 Boy Scouts. The top picture here is George Speakman coming out through a hole in the bottom of a modified Cessna 336 push-pull. Conroy Aviation was modifying them, tried to sell them to the military. Theoretically, the back end would open up so you could load litters and things in. But this was the first day the thing flew, and it didn't work right, so we come out through the bottom. I filled him, and we landed at Goliath, whatever the airport is there at Santa Barbara. And this was ex-Mayor Paulson, used to be LA mayor, and this was part of his campaign. I figured we helped him to defeat him. And I think those jumps were at Pierce College. So, of all the little demo jumps you make around the country, this was Sandy Akron, myself, and Harold Davis jumping into Tascadero, which is over near Paso Robles and San Luis Obispo. We flew over to make the jump in. I couldn't find the drop zone, which is just a little lime circle 20 feet. They parked some cars on it. We had to land, go to town, get the cars kicked off. We came back and made the jump, and by then they ran a string of freight cars right in on a siding just about 50 feet away, so we had to avoid the train to get in. The first teenage fairs were held out at Pacific Ocean Park at the pier in Santa Monica, and we made water jumps up there. We were scheduled to jump, I think, 10 days. I think we jumped 7 out of the 10. The other days we were winded just due to weather. Our chutes were never really dry. Time we would have been dry, we'd already made another water jump, and we made a total of 36 jumps in about 7 days. And over here, they hauled me down to a place called Price 40 Acres in Oklahoma to make a jump for John Schofield. He was setting up a missionary outfit in South Africa as part of a promotional campaign to get him an airplane for his missionary work in South Africa. We were weathered there for about 10 days or 6 days, whatever it was. I got one jump in, and then the weather closed in again. Here's scheduled on one we did at Lincoln, California at the airport. We used to do them periodically, even though they would not let me jump my students on the airport. Okay, we used to carry extra parachutes. This was Jack Knott, who jumped with us in Alaska for many years. He used to be station manager at Alaska Airlines up there with 3 parachutes. In other words, a backpack main, chest pack reserve, and 1 breakaway. Now here's me jumping the racetrack in Fairbanks many years ago, and I had 4.5 parachutes. I had a 14-panel streamer in a bag between my legs, 2 breakaway chest packs, a backpack, and a regular reserve. I had a wooden seat built in one of the harnesses there. I jumped at 6,500 feet and ran out of altitude, got off the wooden seat at 500 feet and put my reserve out. And here is Stan Sykes up in Montana. I've never jumped with him, but he's been jumping a long time. And here he has 6 parachutes, as you can see. Open one, cut it loose, open one, cut it loose. And Dave Burtz and the other troops used to jump with him. Okay, this is back in 1961. This was hoop jumping in the Coliseum, LA Coliseum. It's a Fort Benning type of hoop, and I rigged it, and I rode that thing every day for about 10 times a day for 7-day show, about 70 times altogether. They'd hoist me up and cut me loose, and I would get about 5 seconds of descent before I landed inside the Coliseum, except the winds used to whistle around, and you'd land sometimes almost in the grandstands and sometimes out in the center of the field. I have about several pages there to just show you the technical part of how it's put together, just like Fort Benning. Okay, this shows the Coliseum being empty. They used to have a ballpark in it in those days, and it's rigging the hoop and put underskirting around. One of our riggers went down to bootleg a jump without the underskirting and got broke up badly. A gust of wind hung the parachute on the pegs. The other rigger with him started to lower him. The hoop broke. He fell about 25 feet. Both broke both ankles, both wrists, his back, and his pelvis. And all the people who wanted to ride my toy had disappeared by the time we had showtime. See the details of the chute. It's just been released. This underskirting is to prevent that type of hang-up I just told you about. Here's the trip release mechanism. Your weight is actually being suspended on this. You reach up and pull the swivel handle. It makes a single throw release in the center, and the edge of the skirting pulls off and pegs around the ring, and you're on your own. 5 seconds is all you get under canopy from about 100 feet. This, of course, he used to be Festus on Gunsmoke, but he was one of our heroes on Ripcord. And we used to promote our professional jumping plus Elsinore, where we used to run the school. And here's Major Ralph Weekly. I just left him up in Klamath Falls 4 days ago. He retired of the Army as a major in the Green Berets. And here's a demo picture of a paracommander landing. I really don't know. I think it's in the Philippines. I didn't know where it came from, so I just shoved it in there. We used to jump a variety of military bases as part of our promotional deal to train military jumpers, and our 4-line cut, our buddy jump system. And we jumped Norton Air Force Base. This happens to be Norton here, but we jumped several of the other bases. Denny Manning, who's dead now, Bud Chiso, and myself. I don't know if Jim Hall's in there someplace, I think. Everywhere we jumped, if we jumped military aircraft, you had to go on orders, and these were for Norton Air Force Base, authorization for civilians, from Wright Pat, for civilians to jump a military aircraft. Denny Manning, Bud Chiso, Ralph Weekly, Jim Hall, Kent Carter, and myself. And here is Hero Bud Chiso signing autograph after making the jump. Okay, this was an air show at Chino in 1962, where I screwed up a tall jump. I was aiming for 30,000 feet. I actually got 34,800 feet in a P-51 Mustang, but the pilot did not slow the airplane down, and I couldn't arm my bailout bottle after I disconnected from the ship's oxygen. And I was trying to climb out of the aircraft. I passed out from hypoxia. The pilot realized something was wrong. He kept positive G's on the roll, which we were not supposed to make to begin with, and dropped me down. I came to and got off at 21,000. Also, a good friend of ours, Cliff Winters, was killed in that particular air show. He was clipping a clothesline strung between a couple of dummy buildings with his airplane, and he pumped his gas from a 55-gallon drum without a chamois, which nobody in their right mind does. He had water in, the engine stalled, and he crashed and got killed. Okay, this is another Armed Forces Day, and 1965, this was jumping Miramar, which is the home of the Navy's Top Gun, halfway between LA and San Diego. I remember even nowadays that we had fine ground support. We jumped there once, and then we repacked and made our second series of jumps. And they opened their parachute loft. They assigned a rigger to each one of us and says, "What do you need? Anything we can do to help you?" And it was really appreciated. Some of the other Air Force places that let us pack on the lawn, but they didn't really volunteer to help us too much. A cameras. Tom Sanders now has a little over 4,000 jumps, and 4,000 of them each carried cameras. I don't know, I never counted up the total, but I probably only have about 500 camera jumps. Here's some examples of 16 millimeter. The helmet mount, you have a great parallax between the camera and your sight, so it's better if you have them mounted on the side. Here's another center mount with the batteries, and here's another. These are 16 mounts here. Here's an arm mount. I used to have one work harness and had a variety of loads. I could change different size canopy by just putting a different backpack on and slide the ripcord up on my arm. These old breakaway fittings are off a German World War II paratrooper harness. This is several examples of 35 millimeter camera. I probably carried the first one. I did it way back on ripcord. Here is a center mount 35 with a tracker sight down here. Here is a modified IMO. I lost that particular helmet in the airplane that crashed in the Caribbean when we were shooting Daring Game. And here is another IMO center mount. This is Denny Manning, son of Spud Manning, the famous jumper from the 30s, and Denny is dead now. Once a year, usually about the first week of January, I used to write an annual letter when we were doing pro work, and I would send out approximately 500 copies to people around the world, to other jumpers. And this is a copy of the letter in 1965. In my scrapbook, I have 2 or 3 other years, and it's just a resume of what we did, who we worked with, how things went. But we will not show any of the other years. Here are several of the test jumps. The series of small pictures with Bobby Johnson wearing a new type of automatic opener designed by Pat Jones. Pat died drowned in front of his own house in Malibu, and it involved a heated wire that melted or something. Anyway, it never did go in production. And here is Jim Hall from our outfit riding 00 for Weber aircraft. He had 0 airspeed, 0 altitude. He didn't even have an airplane, and shot that at Hanson Dam, kicked him up 430 feet, so if the chute didn't open, he might get wet, but he wouldn't get really hurt or killed. What we have here is starting with several pages of miscellaneous organization. The Barnstormers is really the Antelope Valley Aerial Museum in Lancaster. Once a year they have a tremendous dinner, and you can write a book on anybody walking through the door. I've met 12 moonwalkers there. I mean, not 12, 6 of the 12 of our astronauts who've walked on the moon. I've met them there. And Tiny Broadwick and I used to represent the jumpers. I haven't gone for many years. More miscellaneous organizations and stuff. Star Spangled Girl is one of the shows we jumped with Sandy Duncan. I used to belong to Stuntmen's Association for about 12 years before I woke up one morning and realized that I did not have much in common with somebody falling off a horse. Here was our company insignia, our old ripcord insignia. Stuntmen's Association. Birds Do It was a show we shot in Florida with Soupy Sales and Bud Chiso and Jim Hughes. I think that was most of it. Cards, the kind you just accumulate. Some were company cards, and others in California you used to have a parachute identification card to jump in California, and here for 10 years we had state law. Here from 1968 to 1978. Screen Actors Guild, I belonged to it for over 20 years. Here's 1961 to 1987, and on and on. Here's one of my old demo cards with a Michigan address. That would have to be back up, an NPJR. It's got to be back about 1953. I kept the Playboy Club executive key card. They gave it to me just for presenting a program at their club. Air Force. Just we're talking back 1961 and 1962. And we trained approximately 150 military civilian test pilot types. Here is Major General Perry Griffith. He was Deputy Inspector General Air Force Safety, and we trained Joe Engle, the astronaut, and lots of real hot rod Korean type aces like Boots Blase, who retired as a general. And we trained, of course, Johnny Carson and General Nishida, Japanese paratrooper commandant. He made some jumps with us. And we trained Ken Curtis, Bud Pinnell, a lot of movie types. We have here probably about 10 pages of our Air Force. We spent quite a while doing Air Force work. Okay, this is what our buddy jump system looked like. This happens to be Bud Kiso. I've made a lot of jumps with it. Tell the way his feet stick out. And I don't know who the other people are. Probably Air Force people. We got Air Force equipment on. Jim Render and Bobby Henry and Milt and a lot of the others did a lot of work on this stuff, so I can't tell them all apart. Air Force training film we shot was called Passport to Safety, and we had to show them how to make water jumps. And here I am after making one 3 miles offshore. You can see how lines tangle up around your feet. If you tread water too long, you create little eddies, and little eddies drag the lines in. I personally could have prevented this. I have 101 water jumps, and we get very good at chaining our lines and doing a lot of other things that the emergency jumper would not do. Part of the Air Force training film, Passport to Safety, involved tree landings, and this particular jumper here is probably Ralph Weekly, just missing the tree. The cameraman is J. Barry Heron, and here is Bud Kiso successfully hanging up in a tree like he's supposed to on the script. I have several hundred tree jumps in the old days in Alaska. We don't make many nowadays. The equipment's too expensive. Passport Safety again. This is Bud Kiso and Ralph Weekly. And Ralph's got a soft shell kit on, and Bud has a hard shell survival kit. And the reserves were hidden like in the soft cushions here, sometimes threaded up and fastened onto the chest strap. And here is the 4-line cut that I invented a zillion years ago. We put it in the Air Force film in 1962. It's on all Air Force shoots. It makes a flat, unsteerable canopy into a steerable canopy simply by releasing 4 lines in the back. We spent quite a while working with the Air Force, and this was on the Air Force training film Passport to Safety. And what we're filming there is man-seat separation, a emergency jump type of a pilot separating from the ejection seat before his parachute opens. I am the primary cameraman. This is dry running on the ground, of course, from the C-130 at El Centro, but Kiso is a backup cameraman, Ralph Weekly riding the seat, and Leo Kanowski from the Air Force test outfit at El Centro doing the jump mastering. And here we are off the end of the aircraft, C-130 at 10,000 feet over El Centro. I could reach out and actually touch Ralph on the foot 2 or 3 jumps in a row, getting real good footage. This is taken from some of the footage I shot, shows the man and seat before the separation. They have a butt snapper that explodes and straightens out some straps and kicks you out of the deal, so your parachute will open, you're not tangled with the seat. Here is part of our crew, Bud Kiso in the gear and hung up on a fence. Here's Ralph Weekly, J. Barry Heron, myself, and Jim Hall. I've forgotten his name. We have a lot of Air Force stuff, but we did spend a lot of time. Here, me with a 16mm camera, Mickey Mouse wings, and tail feathers. We didn't use the tail feathers often enough to make it automatic, and you have a tendency to run into your subjects, so we finally stopped using them. Bud and Ralph wearing Air Force equipment. Here is the whole crew. Jack Favors has been spending a lot of time in China, but he's now in Florida. And Colonel Jackson Saunders was the first Air Force type we trained. He died about 2 years ago. Dan Folgen, one of the heroes in our movie, had to make an emergency jump in Haiphong when he got shot down in Vietnam, but they saved him. Okay, this is me jumping an F-106, 104 seat, and as you can see, from top of my head to the bottom seat is taller than the door is high. It's real awkward getting this much junk in and out of a Cessna. After the seat opens, you pull a lever on the side of the hard shell ejection seat, and a life raft inflates, and all your survival gear lands below you. And you can put your legs on each side of that kit and sort of squat on it, and you can really track like over the horizon like an afterburner. If you activate the kit too high, your canopy develops monstrous oscillations, so pretty soon you learn to wrap your leg around that descending line and apply reverse rudder pressure, and you can dampen a oscillating canopy very well that way. I don't have any good pictures here, but this is Joe Engel, one of our students. Of course, he's an astronaut. He got sort of cheated out of going to the moon. By the time he was scheduled to go to the moon, the hardware had been proven so well they knocked him off and put a rock hound, a geologist, on. But he has flown our shuttle several times. This is a picture of he and myself. And so he retired. He's now a consultant, making a lot more money as a consultant in Houston than he was flying the shuttle. This looks like a first jump diploma from Fort Benning, Georgia. It is sort of, except it isn't real. It says, we know that Bob Sinclair successfully completed the airborne course. Of course, in 1971, I was shooting an Army commercial down there. I'd just been in a helicopter wreck in the Philippines. I couldn't even walk. And Jack Helms, D-19, who used to be in the Army team, was a major by then, and he was writing out these first jump certificates. Brand new troopers are jumping with us. I says, hey Jack, do I get one of those? He says, if you want one, I'll give you one. So he wrote one out. I do not have it with my real ones. But so we shot this commercial. Here was Colonel Welch. He's dead now, but he used to be the commanding officer down there. And because I couldn't even walk, I would pull my rear risers and land on one heel on my butt. He would send a Jeep over to pick me up every jump. The same commercial, here's Jack Helms. He would sneak a jump in occasionally when he can. He had his old Army jumpsuit, so beat up he had to put tape on to hold it together, and this is me with... Okay, we've done one of the 3 scrapbooks. We have 2 more to go. Milt and I are doing this. This is the 2nd day. We're going to put the other 2 books on the same tape. I want to warn you that do not attempt to show all 3 tapes or all 3 books at one showing. That could constitute cruel and unusual punishment. Preferably show even the people that are in them. Do not show them more than 1 book a day or a week, or preferably 1 a year. So we'll get on the 2nd book right now. Book number 2 is labeled CAL-BSSP, meaning California and Bob Sinclair School of Parachuting. Actually, we have some sections dealing with other drop zones besides the school, so it's actually is my school activities plus sport jumping. And here is a poster from my school back when the first jump course was only $50, which is $100 cheaper than it is now. And the slogan, "Get your knees in the breeze," came from Carol Platt. I stole it from her. I don't know where she got that. Some of this goes back a while. Here's an article in the paper talking about me training students, and this is back in 1960. I'm not sure which paper it is. And here is our school type of first jump certificate. I built the things. The drawing was made from a jump of Clarice Garrison on a low pole, and it lists the date, location, the altitude, the aircraft, and a bunch of pertinent data about the jumps. And all in all, I like them much better than any of the first jump certificates they make now. The ones that the United States Parachute Association issues through their drop zone system are particularly poor. Okay, this is just a printed deal about my school. This is when I opened one in Hyperion, first skydiving school in Los Angeles, meaning of course that we conducted classes there. We didn't do our jumping there. And this was a decal I worked up for Taft. We never used it. The Taft drop zone is open again now. Of course, I use all squares. And this was a zap strap, a safety sleeve I devised but it really was an extension from the student's ripcord. So you jumped him, you had his ripcord in your hand all the time. If you're screwing around, you could zap him up there. And it's a good idea. They should be using something like that now on their AFF students. Okay, we have several pages of school propaganda, how to get to the drop zones, what the first jump course consists of. Here's mention about the school in the 82nd Association paper called The Streamer, and some of my school cards. We'll just show this one particular page here and eliminate some of the others. This is a listing of various BSSP forms and first jump certificate, applications, manifest, and I maintain a file with a couple of copies of all those various forms. And this is, of course, a picture of the Taft drop zone with the canal going by and the tanks. This is the bowl we used to jump in, and here's the airstrip right here. And I used to write a sport parachuting column for a sport-oriented magazine that broke down in different segments, and I handled sport parachuting. So naturally, most of the copy was about my school, map showing the location in Los Angeles. Of course, we never had too many still pictures, so you'll see the same things over and over in about all of our printed copy. Here's another example. This is called Singles Critique for Singles, and of course I wrote the copy, us jumping the Philippines and with Johnny Carson, and can't even read that copy from here. This is a copy of a story in Saga magazine in 1964 of Ron Hawthorne making a parachute jump. He was, if not the first, at least one of the first paraplegics, and Milt Platt and I trained him, and he wrote this article. It runs for about 4 pages. I have it all in the scrapbook. I'm going to show several here. A very poor title, Jump You Crippled Jump, but he forgot to put a title on, and so they did it for him. He retired from the Bank of America. He's now living in Northern California. I saw him just a couple of weeks ago. He has made one tandem jump since then and wants to go do some AFF type of jumping. And here is Ron on the splashdown. He made 2 jumps. I put him in the ocean 3 miles off Newport Beach. In those days we had state law, and to avoid state law we would jump past the 3-mile limit. I think Dick Dunphy put him out on his 2nd jump, and I think they jumped him in Lake Elsinore about the same time. Now, of course, there's quite a few paraplegics jumping, but Ron is either the first or one of the first. Okay, of course, over a period of time, we collect zillions of copies. Like here, here's a breakfast kickoff at the airport, be jumping in. Here's our school at Taft. Jack Johnson, who is now up in the state of Washington, living on a houseboat. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. And me in drop zone control, and Janet Carter, one of my students. This is the type of stuff you accumulate lots and lots of. We have to edit it and throw out anything that doesn't really fit the format. One article about Sinclair seeks approval of the buddy jumps, and USPA started their AFF stuff. I asked for authorization to train my people using a single instructor, and they said, oh, no, we can't let you do that. Of course, someday they'll shake down their system and get it where it should be. One instructor is all you ever need. And here's my old bus, not the one I have now. This is at the Taft drop zone, and Jack Johnson again, who helped me for years up there with my students. This is the Taft hangar. Many years ago they used to jump there. I didn't jump there, but then they moved the drop zone operation out to Art Armstrong's property about 3 miles to the east. You probably will not be able to see these photos very well. The first 2 pictures shows where my parachute school was set up on Hyperion, just east of Hollywood. It had been a military equipment surplus yard. We went through and we warehoused everything. It was sunk down below the street, and we cleaned it all up and painted everything, made it very sanitary. The classrooms are inside, and we had a training area with a sandbox for landings and a mock-up for exit and training harnesses, and an outside packing table. We had a sewing machine room. We had everything there. It was pretty nice. We had it there for I don't know how many years. Pictures of my school at Lincoln up by Sacramento, the last school I had. It was in this building here, and here's the back end of my current bus. I had office, classrooms, equipment room, training areas. We had everything in there, very compact, very nice. I've had other schools, of course, like Wheeler Ridge facilities I do not have any photos of, but I know Jim Platt says he's got some. I will get some and try to update some of these other locations. After Spike Yarder's Beach crashed at Taft, with a total of 13 people went in, Taft gradually closed down, and I started training my people over at California City using their Cessna 206. This particular girl was a reporter for a paper, and I'm jump master here, coming off with a very good position. You generate tons of this kind of stuff, so we only put in several to represent what the others look like. These pictures were taken at the California City drop zone. I started the first drop zone. Jim Hughes and I worked up there in 1963 or 64, but these photos were taken in about 5 years ago. And to show some of my students coming off, here's one with a bad arm. We had to strap one arm down, and but he did very well. This is what California City drop zone looks like. This is a posed picture. You can't see it. It shows part of a creosote bush with a ripcord underneath it and a large rattlesnake. So when you're in the desert, look under the bushes before you reach to pick up a ripcord. Actually, the snakes at California City are not that big. I dragged that one down off the hill from Tehachapi, about 15 miles away, because it was a bigger snake. And I have another picture of this later. Okay, this is part of that picture I just said I'd show you later. This is Ralph Wiggins. Now, Ralph's been jumping since 1937. He has 564 jumps. He used to do pro working. I jumped some air shows with him back in the old days. He jumped for some movies like The Lindbergh Story, The Great Walter Pepper, and now he only jumps on his birthdays, and which is November 29th. And this was a jump we jumped with him over at California City. The other two people in the picture I bypassed was Milt Platt's kids, Jim and Mark Platt. This is a sign I had on the bulletin board at my jump schools for many years. It's a listing of all the equipment that a paratrooper wore and carried when he jumped into France in the Normandy invasion June 6, 1944. And it was considerable. So underneath that I have a sign there, so stop bitching about how much the chutes weigh or we'll ship you off to the Army. You won't be able to see the details on this, but this is Elsinore Paracenter, and here is the old lake bottom. Here is the runway. Here is the airport buildings here, and the drop zone here, and the Marine Corps had their own drop zone just across the wash there. Now Elsinore is open again. They've put an earthen dam across here. It was flooded out twice to a depth of about 8 foot. All the old buildings are gone, but they will not flood anymore because of the new protective diking. This was our Elsinore crew in the old days. Dave Burt and Jim Hall and myself ran the thing, and all the rest of these people worked for us. Here's Jim Render in the background, and Frank Carpenter, who is dead, and Bud Kiso and Vern Williams, and I have to stop and think. And Gary Patmore, Gary Rogers, and here's another picture taken about the same era. Some kids have scratched across it. Gosh, the first line is not too lucky. Shelton Meekin was killed in Vietnam. Denny Manning is dead. Roy Fryman was killed in Vietnam. But Dick Dumpley's back there, and Bob Herring, and Ray Smith, and I have to stop and think, one of the other pilots. Okay, myself, Sniveling Jim Hughes, can't remember this student's name, but he was a hero on a short-lived TV series called Custer. This was his girlfriend, and George Speakman, who is now back in Rome, Indiana, and of course J. Barry Heron, who did most of our photography for about 20 years. Down at the bottom is Roy Fryman. You can't quite see him behind there, but this is John DeFreitas, who was a Master Sergeant in Marine Force Recon, took a commission, retired as a major, and this is the baton we're going to pass. This is me coming in to get it. The baton was a oak Jacob's ladder rung off a Greek ship denominator that cracked up off the coast out here. Okay, this was the Taft drop zone, October 1982. Spike Yarder's Twin Beach went in with 12 jumpers and Spike. He'd been flying jumpers for 20 years. What happened is, on takeoff, he bounced to take off a little bit, and some of the jumpers slid down to the tail of the aircraft. When he pulled up to clear the power lines on the south end of the field, some of the jumpers slid down to the tail, and the nose came up, over and in. The whole flight, maybe 30 seconds, 400 feet. Myself and the Platt brothers were the first ones there. Within 3 minutes, we checked and nobody got out. They all burned. From California City, we went to from Taft after the wreck, after the accident. We went to California City. I started the first jump club there about 63 or 64. Van Prey, he used to be one of my students in the old days, had this club set up out there. It's still in operation, and I put my own students out there for a while, and then everybody went to squares, and so I started teaching square students for about 4 years there at California City. An article, probably in Parachutist, says Bob Sinclair, California City fixture for 20 years. I did not spend 20 years at California City. Maybe a total of about 6 altogether, and they have just a picture of me dry running exits with Johnny Carson. Here is a couple of pictures of California City as it was in '64 when Jim Hughes, myself, and Tom Gray, and some of the rest of you were throwing students out there. We had state law in those days, so we couldn't jump near the buildings. We had to go out here. You can see part of the plowed drop zone across the runway. And so nowadays they jump in much closer. These particular pictures are Dave Burt testing a gun-deployed parachute for Weber aircraft. I took the pictures, and it shoots a slug out that pulls the parachute out, so you didn't have to get man seat separation from the ejection seat. But we had to import our jackrabbits and everything in those days. At California City a couple of years ago, it was actually a birthday party for me. I'm over here. You can't see these people, but here's Ralph Wiggins, the old jumper, Van Prey, and his wife Alberta, and Jim Papke, Tom Sitton, and Pat Moorhead, our national director, and one of the twin otters they have over there. They got me a stripper as part of the program, but they wouldn't let me keep her. I just came back down from Alaska at this particular party, and Jim Papke dressed up like me. I'm not quite sure where he got all that good-looking B-12 gear, but it sure looks good. And here I am jumping a Lopo, and I fell down, so a girl took the picture. If I'd known she had a camera, I would have stood up. Now we're getting to the section of the book on people, and this is on Tiny Broadwick, and this particular article was written by Gretchen Sitton, Tom's ex-old lady. She's living over in Palm Springs now, still a nurse, but she fell off a horse and hurt her back, so she's not doing any jumping. I have a variety of articles on Tiny, and these pictures are from some old photos. I have slides of them. This is how she jumped in 1914. She made 1,000 jumps between years 1908 and 1922. Here's some more pictures of Tiny, which I have slides of. The first woman jumping from an airplane, that was 1913, and landing in Griffith Park, which is now the parking lot for the LA Zoo, and the first woman to jump a hydroplane, or float plane as they called them in those days, 1913, into Lake Michigan. She was flown by Glenn Martin. She jumped her father's coat packs, never had a reserve parachute. She made many jumps from her balloon. Okay, this is more material from the Tiny file. Here's Tiny Broadwick with Muriel Simbros, when Muriel was the first American girl world champion parachutist. And here's Tiny at a special program we had for her at the Adventures Club, showing off her Master Blaster wings that the Army team had given her. And here was a letter from General Jimmy Doolittle to Tiny. It came to our office, but he regretted that he couldn't make the festivities because he had some previous engagement. Okay, here's some pictures of Tiny taken at a party I had in Hollywood when I was up working on the pipeline. I came back, we had a get-together. This is a picture of her being at the Adventures Club bash, getting all kinds of awards. Here she is back in World War II, trying to trade an old surplus parachute to a paratrooper for a folding stock carbine. Tiny was born in 1893, and she died in 1978 at the age of 86. And fine, fine lady. Getting into people, these two top photos are J. Barry Heron. He's still working as a director of photography in Hollywood, and he spent 15 or 20 years working with us, hanging out of airplanes or underwater, taking pictures. This is myself and Jack Jones, who is down in Texas. Jack made his first airplane jump in 1943 when he got shot down in a Spitfire at 400 feet over Egypt. And Donna Abricia, Donna's been living out in Hawaii for many years. She married an Army colonel. This is Bud Kiso. Anybody who's jumped with him will remember how his feet always came out. You can recognize him a million miles away. And this is Scratch Garrison, who lives in San Francisco now, and he is jumping now at YOLO. The jumpers told me there a couple of weeks ago, and he's changed his name to Ben Daniels. So when I see him, I'll say, "Hi, Jack Daniels," and he'll say Ben. All right, this is Gary Patmore, and we haven't heard from him recently. He spends probably all of his time, or most of his time, at a place on the beach down in Baja that he's been going to for years. This is Carl Bamish. He and his wife have been the honchos of base jumping, where they jump off buildings and cliffs for years. Unfortunately, Carl got killed a couple of years ago jumping off Trollveggen over in Norway. The Ropemore. Barbara Ropemore made about 3,000 jumps before she stopped jumping. This is her husband, Jerry. He's been out flying aircraft out of Guam for many, many years. I'm not sure if Barbara has joined him. I thought she had, but Alan Silver, who I jumped with 3 weeks ago, says he thinks she's living in Hayward and is going to check. It's a shame to see such talented people not in the air. I've got to think, this was a way, way back. This is probably 1962. Brian Williams from the Arvin Good Guys, and Bob Higbee, and Bud Kiso, Bob Bouquard, Bob Herring, Ralph Weekly, who I just saw up in Oregon about a week and a half ago, retired as a major in the Green Berets. Art Jarrell, I saw in Northern California, and he's working ski patrol in the winter, goofing off in the summer. Denny Manning, wow, I can't think here. And Ed, who's that? I have to stop and think. Anyway, he's in Texas now. These bottom two pictures shows Shelton Eakin making a dead center stand-up landing when he was instructor at Elsinore. Unfortunately, he stepped on a mine in Vietnam and died. Okay, old-time pictures. Bob Herring's up in Denver, Colorado. Here's myself. Roy Fryman was killed in Vietnam. Here's Milt Platt, who is running this camera, and Dick Dunphy, who lives back, where is it, Milt? Just outside of Chicago, Illinois. Here's Jim Hall, who went back into the military, retired about 4 years ago of the Colorado Air Guard, and they made him a general. That means only 4 more promotions to get back up to civilian. Okay, this was at the Barnstormers deal in Lancaster. An old friend of mine by the name of Mary Lou, and Pat Jones, who used to be Special Forces, used to help instruct at my school. Unfortunately, he drowned in front of his own house in Malibu. And here's Ted Tate, Grover Ted Tate, who is now living at Joshua Tree, south of Dallas in Texas. He's writing aviation books. Very good friend of Pancho Barnes. He wrote Pancho, the woman who tamed Pegasus. And he has a place down in Zihuatanejo where he spent many years writing. George Speakman, who did a lot of jumping with us, also an Elsinore instructor. He was one of the honchos in the expedition we sent down to Peru after the earthquake. He refreshed everybody who had not jumped for a while. He is back in Rome, Indiana, runs a marine in the summertime. I have a feeling he goose off in the wintertime. Here's Ralph Weekly. Of course, I saw him up north a little while ago, and he retired as a major in the Green Berets. And this is Alta Dairy, Frank Dairy's ex-old lady. Frank Dairy invented dairy slots and tails in the early 40s for the smoke jumpers, and Alta had her parachute loft by International Airport. Jim Render bought her out, and we ran a loft there for a while. You can see how the old Navy packing shows, the old silk parachutes. Old day. Here's B and Mary Lou in a couple of pictures. Don't remember this girl's name, this lady's name, but this is Red Grant the Batman. And here is a picture on his old bat wings, and he autographed it to me. It could possibly be Tom Sitton. Tom Sitton made about 50 jumps on them. And somewhere along the line, Tom and myself are going to build up some bitch and metal foils that will give us 3 minutes of flight time from 12,500 feet instead of 1 minute of free fall. The Rogues Gallery, Sniveling Jim Hughes. He's back out of Pittsburgh back there terrorizing the neighborhood. He comes out and makes about one jump a year when he visits his folks in California. And here's Clarice Garrison, Scratch's ex-old lady. She married Jake Reiner, who was also in the first one or two 8 and 10 man formations. Currently they're in Kentucky. I don't expect them to stay there too long. Nobody can stand that kind of weather. Here's Jim Hall, Bud Kiesel, and Deke Soniston, who used to be the head honcho of the United States Parachute Association. And here is Lou Benson, a retired Navy test jumper with 1,250 jumps. He lives in Paso Robles. He has some medical problems now. Last time we jumped there about 3 months ago, I just finished these scrapbooks. He couldn't come down to see him because his doctor would not allow him to drive, but I will get them to him. Can't see the little picture, but Jim Hughes' ex-old lady, Rita, who is in Maine, and a friend of mine, old Sam, Linda Kaplan, who is now living in a place called Vallapa outside of Puerto Vallarta, and goes by the name of Tara Yes. Old pictures. Harold Price, haven't seen him for years, was manager for Cantor's, the largest Jewish restaurant in Los Angeles. And Lloyd Bryden. Harold had a back problem, so only made a water jump about once a year with us. This is Barbara Oakmore and myself on Jack Linkletter's show, Art Linkletter's Kid. Here's Roy Fryman at Elsinore, and this is from Major Sasajima, the Japanese paratroopers, way back in '64. He retired. He's now one of their honchos in their sport jumping organization in Japan. Walt Pika and myself, we came down from Alaska in 1959. Here's a picture of Walt somewhere in Michigan. Bobby Johnson used to jump with us, got married. He's in Florida somewhere. And here's a Christmas card from Mark Platt, one of Milt's kids. I don't remember who this guy is here. Jeannie McCombs jumped for many years. She got killed, but she had trouble putting out a hand-deployed parachute. She had over 3,000 jumps. Perry Small, fine parachute jumper, fine rigger, and he made the first test jump on the Yankee extraction system, and he's been down in Texas for many years. All three of these pictures were taken at a night jump. I think it was Lancaster. Here's Fran Dunphy, Dick's wife. They're, like I say, they live outside of Chicago. Can't remember most of these people. Here's Vern Williams. And the reason I put all these pictures in there, I happened to win that thing. How to go. Here's Dave Burt jumping at Weeks Field in 1952 with a camouflage 12 canopy. And this was about 58 at one of the sports shows at the sports arena. Jim Hall, Dave Burt, Russ Wheeler. Russ had several very successful parachute manufacturing companies in the El Monte area. He sold out 3 or 4 or 5 years ago probably, and is now living retired up in Shelton area, up in Washington where my folks used to live. And obviously I have Alaska patch on, so I just come down from Alaska, about 58, 59. Here's a picture of Dave Burt taking the office. Now this photo here, you can't see it, but it's an old crew in 1968 at Elsinore, and Bill and Judy Stimler gave it to me last year for my birthday present, or for a Christmas present, and the jumpers on it, in it, I don't know, Milt Platt and Jim Hughes and George Speakman and Bill Edwards and Kenny Voss, Jeet Garrity. Can't tell them all from here, but old jumpers. Okay, here's a couple pictures of Tony Lemus showing how to pack a parachute in Elsinore in the old days, and standing with Sherry Buck. She was on our U.S. team in about, 62. Tony doesn't jump anymore, hasn't for about 10 years, but he's down at Elsinore drop zone just about every weekend. And here's Dick Dunphy, myself, and Margie number 1, and Jim Hall. This is way back about 1962 when we helped start the Latin Skydivers. Amazingly enough, the second generation of the Latin Skydivers are still jumping. Here's a miscellaneous picture of me putting a student out of the 206 at California City, and a picture of me with a helmet camera. This is an old Christmas card from Peter Hearn, and it shows part of his troops coming off the tail end of an Argosy at 12,500 feet over England. Peter retired a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago anyway. as a group captain in the RAF. He has written several books on parachuting and on Leslie Irving other topics. Now these two girl jumpers here were some of my round students, and here's some of my square students. I can't really tell the difference. Sandy Ackerman is now living up by Seattle, and little Jackie DeCosta has given up jumping and is a crackerjack pilot. She has 1,500 hours on her own airplane. I'm not quite sure where Lynn is. Here is Ralph White. He used to jump with us at Lancaster. He's still doing motion picture work and has his own company. He did some fantastic underwater footage on the special of the Titanic. And here's some of the girls we used in the commercial. Here's Patty Cressida, Wilson, Whitcliffe, depending what time you knew her. She is now back from New York and is manifesting at the California City Club. And Carol Carson, who used to be part of the Skydiving magazine crew way back in the old days, about 30 years ago. A survival vest that we made for Airborne Research and Development Company. We jumped them in the ocean and things. This is a self-portrait by Ralph Wiggins of a 1938 Hoffman Triangular parachute. Last November, he jumped this when I jumped with him on his birthday, and he blew a small hole. You can't blow a large hole because of many reinforcing tape. Here's an old crew with Mike Milk and Jerry Wilkie and George Speakman and Bill Edwards. And here's Gary Patmore showing his swimming suits and new shorts at one of our parties. Okay, in about 1975 or 76, I came down on R&R from the pipeline in Trudeau Bay, and I held a little party at the Grapevine. It wasn't a real party, but I bought the first 500 drinks, so naturally some of the old jumpers showed up. Here's Dickie Doo and Annie, his wife, who owned the bar during the pouring. This is on Hollywood Boulevard near Sunset. Hunter Von Leer is an actor. I saw him at California City about 2 months ago. They had a whole village set up there with an artificial airstrip. He plays a part of a colonel in a forthcoming feature movie called Into the Sun. Here's Milt Platt, who took most of these pictures, and Dickie Doo. And here's Carl Alge, who is still jumping. Reason he had his face covered up in this particular picture, he was a vice cop, LAPD, and he was on duty. There's Tom and Gretchen Sidden. And here's Kevin Donnelly, who was on cover of Parachutist just last month. He has over 5,000 jumps. He'll keep pouring along. Page is from the same party. Tiny Broadwick is there. Here's Ron Hawthorne. And here's some of the girls and myself and Tiny. And here's Sam, Linda Kaplan, who was down in Puerto Vallarta. And of course, as you can see, we have some of the old rumble seaters here, Bob Digby and Tony Lemus. Okay, some more pictures of the same party. Here's Art Gerald. Like I say, he's getting ready to go on ski patrol up out of Reading, where he lives. And Colonel Jackson Saunders, he died a couple of years ago. He was our first Air Force buddy jumper. And Milt Platt and Tony Dyer at the party. I have a couple of pages here of military type jumpers. Here's Roy Bryden in the air and landing. He used to be the first sergeant of the Army team. And as you can see, he never smiles. And here's the old track team. There's Jerry Borkman and Danny Byard and some of the others. Danny died in an auto accident just a year ago. Jerry Borkman is down at Elsinore and is an active jumper. Another picture of the old Army team. I hate to guess how far back it is, but here's General Sinilov, John Sinilov, who Carter fired from Korea many years ago for insisting that his troops be better trained than what the government is allowing him. Here's Jim Ahrens, the first American male championship. We used to call him Henrietta Ahrens. Here is Lou Vinson, the retired Navy test jumper. He went back into the military and started the Shooting Stars. This is the Navy test team, the Navy exhibition team, the Shooting Stars. This is an article that I wrote. It's in Parachutist magazine about '82. The title from old to new, 25 years of USDA, PCA, and I just told how the jumping used to be in the old days, and I give it out just for information sometimes to some of the interested jumpers. Okay, this is the Death Valley Marathon, and what it is a bunch of Vietnam veterans who jump in once a year at Death Valley Junction and run about 15 miles a day until they complete a 100-mile marathon. I have not run the marathon, but I handle the drop zone control and talk them in by radio. These people are going to make their first jumps, and usually Joni Mahoney handles the jump mastering, and here's a couple of my ex-students, Saluski, Cindy Saluski, and Audrey. Audrey made her first jump that day. I wear these wings on my hat because it's the only wings that nobody knows what it really is. In 1970, they had an earthquake in Peru, and we sent a bunch of jumpers down there to jump in and survey the damage and call in aid and support. And we sent two teams down there, one under Jerry Hemming out of Miami, and the other out of under the supervision of Bob Brown. Okay, Bob Brown just got out of the Green Berets in those days, and now he's a colonel in the Beret Reserve, and he has the Soldier of Fortune magazine concessions or setup. I did not go down to Peru, but the Peruvian embassy wrote me out a letter of appreciation just for using my school facilities and helping organize everything. This is a certificate that parachutist gives you, United States Parachute Association gives you when you write something as a contributing author for parachutists. Periodically I have written things, I don't know what article this is for, and this is a certificate they give you for being a member for a certain period of time, starting with 10 years. This particular one is for 25 years membership. I have a 30-year somewhere that I will replace this one with, and in another year I'll have 35 years of membership. This certificate of appreciation was given to me by the Paso Robles Skydiving Club, and Al Stevens over there. This was from last November when we put on Old Timers deal. This was Ralph Wiggins jumps, and I jumped a double L behind him. It's a small but real nice organization over there. In the neighborhood, stop it and speak to right. Here's a listing of 67 different types and models of aircraft I have jumped. I jumped more than that, but the list is not complete. Several pages of miscellaneous patches and cards. The old C license opened up like a book, which is C59. I don't know where my D license went. Here's a photostat. We have to get it verified every year. And old membership cards went from NPJR, United States Parachute Jumpers Riggers, to Parachute Club of America, PTA, and the United States Parachute Association. In Alaska, they did not allow us to join NPJR until 53 because somebody figured that we did not live in the United States. So here's the jump master rating, and these are the patches that the USPA issues for jump mastering for instructing. Here's the way the shoulder patches look: NPJR, PCA, USPA, member United States Parachute Association. More miscellaneous cards and patches. Pacific Coast Sport Parachute World Record Mass Jump in 1965. 62 of us jumped economy at Taft. And here is a SCR Star Crest recipient. My number is, 728. They gave it to me for being based on a camera run. And we had Scratch Garrison and Ted Webster, Patty Wilson, and Jerry Bird, Diane Bird, on and on. Okay, I also have honorary members like in the Imperial Club in Tokyo, Japan, and in the Marine Corps at El Toro, performers passes, jumping at no players, airman ID. We used to have federal law, or you had to have an ID card to fly. But here's a reunion from a reunion dance 20 years for the last skydivers. Nobody thought they would survive 20 years of jumping, but they did. In fact, they survived 30 years of jumping. But Dick Pedley being killed on a base jump last December, actually December '89, that's a year and a half ago. Dick had over 4,000 real jumps. The only reason I put in here because he and I jumped together over a period of years, off and on, many times. He had 4,000 real jumps, about 8 base jumps. He picked up some twists, and his lines of his parachute that simply slammed him inside the building and killed him. Here's some pictures of my Cessna 206 I had at my drop zone at Lincoln. I had a fuel problem and crashed. I keep the pictures to remind me, don't buy any more airplanes. Here is my current bus before I painted it. I have pictures here, a space for a picture of John and Judy Ladner's bus that I helped them convert last year at Paso Robles. They have not got the picture to me yet. Some of this stuff is kind of hard to fit in, but I came down from Alaska and jumped over the Rose Bowl on January 1st, 1953. And here's a picture of me and Larry Bill, the pilot, and a PT-22 that I jumped out of. I did not go in only because I got loaded at a New Year's Eve party the night before and never picked my ticket up. I waited at the last possible second, turned around and ran across the crowd and picked my feet up and cleared the fence so they could not put my butt in jail. I had a damaged parachute where I snagged it going into the racetrack in Fairbanks, a modification for old Gary Slots and tails. Just keeping up. Okay, at various times I've done some diving, and this was the Sparling School of Deep Sea Diving I went to after I got out of the paratroopers. This was in Wilmington, California, and I have several pages on miscellaneous diving stuff. E.R. Cross owned and headed the school, and he spent many years diving out in Hawaii. He set up the whole Chevron dock system out there, and yeah, here's the diploma from Sparling School, me with a hard hat rig on. Unfortunately, after the war, the Navy released hundreds of excellent professional divers, and there was not much of a market for kids just getting out of a commercial school at that time. John Michalowski did work on the Walrus submarine that was lost in the late 30s. And this is a NAUI certification for scuba diving, and a NAUI card. You have to have either a NAUI or a PADI card if you want to be able to get your bottle filled, get some oxygen in the hood. Paratroopers as a demolitionist, but I never had any pictures of blowing up things. But when we were going to Sparling School of Deep Sea Diving, Cross also had a construction company, and he had a project for sinking an old barge, 125 foot long by 50 foot wide, that they used for construction of Long Beach breakwater. And so we blew the thing, and I had a chance to put some pictures in my book of me blowing up something. Yeah, these are some cards that I've gotten from various jumpers. The first one's a birthday card, and says, I bet you think this birthday card couldn't possibly have anything in it. You open it up so it shows 4 holes, and it says you're right. You open up to show 6 holes. It says, but if you place 6 cans of beer in the holes and carry it over to my place, I'll help you celebrate your birthday. And by Scott Wakefield and Rhonda. This one up here is from a girl jumper back east. Says suck, 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 suck. And you open it up and says, don't laugh, you're next. This is from a girl jumper by Sacramento. Says, hope to see you during the holidays. And you'd open it up because your ornaments are so well hung. Merry Christmas. Off Weekly sent me from Vietnam. It showed Snoopy sitting there at a GI beer hall with a pile of empty cans with a beret on his head, and it says, quote, life is short and full of shit, Merry Christmas. Somebody stole that, but I'll find it somewhere. This goes back a while. This is a basic infantry company, basic training, and the RTC on the flag stands for Replacement Training Center. The war was on and we were being trained for replacement. This particular company, we were all volunteers for the paratroopers, and I have some, I was on a recruiting team at one time, and General Gavin signed a letter of appreciation, and I kept it finally because his signature was on it. That was 1946. Here's old airborne stuff. Me going to jump school. I was in the 517th and 13th Airborne at the end of the war in the 505, the 82nd, and this is some of my very first jumps, and I'm away home as a civilian, and a membership card in the 82nd Airborne Division Association. This is a picture of Alan Silver, an old friend. I showed him the scrapbook when we jumped about 3-4 weeks ago, and told him I didn't have any pictures of him, so he donated these. They will not go in this book. I'll probably start a cartoon section, and he'll lead it off. But he has his own parachute company in Hayward, outside of Oakland, and this is book number 3, the last one, and its title is Places, and the places are listed alphabetically, starting A in Alaska and ending up P like in the Philippines. I spent probably close to 20 years in Alaska. I know I spent 17 winters there, and so I have quite a few pages on Alaska. I first went up there in 1946, 47 with Easy Company 505 to 82nd testing winter equipment. We made jumps and shoot around 50 below zero temperatures. This was in jumping on Creamer's Dairy way back in 1946. The old T7 parachutes. Kenyon and Harris, a couple guys in my squad, screwing around. One was taking pictures, and the other let his parachutes collided with him. And Kenyon got the soldier's medal, but in reality, we had a couple feet of snow on the ground. I doubt if he would have got hurt if he would have just dropped it. You can't see these pictures, but here we are jumping Creamer's Dairy and having chutes on lined up to make jumps. Here's my feet sticking out below the door of a C-47, jumping at Creamer's Dairy, and we had one of our people from our company streamer in and got killed up there. And here's some pictures of us at 50 below zero, chopping trees to build an ice bridge to get our tanks across the river up there. We started civilian jumping up there in 49, and here was our jump club in 1952, and here's part of the notice. I sent a newspaper clipping to NPGR when I first applied for membership there in the early 50s. Some of our old Fairbanks Parachute Club cards, 1958, 1960 something. Pickle of the Fairbanks News Miner, first shoot jump, big thrill to stewardess. This particular stewardess is Yvonne Rose. We jumped people for 16 years up there with no static lines, but she had a hard pull, and she opened low and didn't land on the drop zone, went across the road, landed up here in a tree. She's standing here pointing to her canopy. Here's Jack Hodgman, ex-Marine, one-legged Marine. We only jumped him in the wintertime so he wouldn't hurt his other leg. Phil Ward, Air Force type, combat control team, and he jumped up there with us a long time. More students is here. Typical jump in the wintertime, nothing but gray in the sky, gray in the ground. In 1958, we trained several military-type jumpers free fall before Fort Benning and Fort Campbell, Kentucky, were allowed to train any of their jumpers free fall. The Alaska Army Command gave us authorization, and this particular jumper had been a jumper in the 101st Airborne during Normandy. Okay, we had a jumper, Chuck Curry, who was killed on a jump up there in 1952, and you'll note here, it says, see the editorial on the other side. The editor says, please do your jumping farther out of town. Don't worry about the jumpers getting killed. They don't want you landing on people. One winter I worked for Alaska Railroad. We had several other jumpers working there. I was running an old D7 pushing snow. And here's packing an old candy stripe on my house in Fairbanks in the early 50s. Just typical articles in the local papers up there, many years of this. Jumper with faulty chute, lands on the University of Alaska building. Shoot club ends season with jump at Moose Dinner. Joan Harrison breaks ankle and parachute jump. Makes 300 leaps at air exhibition. Joan Harrison is still in contact. She's now living in Santa Barbara, and she got a hold of me through an ad in Parachutist about 5 years ago. This is downtown Fairbanks, and I'm holding up the back of a parachute canopy so one of our jumpers can drive this truck, which we had disguised as a float, all the way backwards through the main drag of Fairbanks. Many pages of this type of thing, and it's just from the local press in Fairbanks, usually relating to some of our jumps. I used to jump the pipe landing at the airport club every week. Spent about 10 years jumping the racetrack. This particular announcement here is Bartender's Annual Picnic, and myself and Art Frank making the jump. This is a little article I wrote up in Argosy magazine at an air show at Palmer. I came off the top wing of a Stearman, and the pilot had been living on Benny's, and the Z-forces blacked him out. He completed the loop and cut my parachute off me, and I got my reserve open below the airport I was supposed to land on. I call it jump number one. We don't jump like that anymore. Here's in Alaska. In this case, I'm jumping a smoke jumper rig and jumping, this is a posed picture in front of a Cunningham Hall that I jumped a different aircraft, and advertising the old smoke jumper movie Red Skies of Montana. And here's little Gus, Ralph Gustafson, landing on the edge of the dog race chute at the dog races on Creamer's Dairy between the cars. This is a picture of me is on the ground, but we used to do this in the air, sitting on the top of the old Stearman we had. It had just the 220 horsepower Continental, so never could get too much altitude. And here is Gus and myself, all dressed up, waiting to jump into the Rendezvous racetrack in July 1956. Picture of me jumping into the Rendezvous racetrack on a flat, unmodified C9 canopy. All you did was shine your jump boots, roll up your sleeves, and jump. Okay, years later, in 1975, they knocked down all the trees behind the Rendezvous racetrack for a pipeline, or for a yard for the last of the pipeline. And right here in this area is the old racetrack that we used to jump in, right there.
So I is going to get blamed because the wind is coming up.
Here is the type of copy where you get auto racing, Rendezvous Speedway, plus Bob Sinclair, Dusty Vine, parachute jump, 3 p.m. sharp, Bob Sinclair, parachute jump, Elastic, Daredevil, on and on. And I couldn't very well put 10 years of this stuff in, so I just put representatives from 65 and 58 and 66, a little bit from each year. 1955, I jumped as Associated Press correspondent for the 503rd Regiment of the 11th Airborne, Operation Snowbird, which was a winter maneuver up there. I jumped as a civilian. It's always great jumping with the military as a civilian. You can get away with all kinds of things. Here's my press card. Here's some of my credentials allowing me to jump from the military, from the papers. Here's some of the pictures I took, one going out the door, and after I landed, and my story went out worldwide over Associated Press correspondent, or over the Associated Press network. Several of the pictures I took when I jumped with the paratroopers. We had to carry quite a bundle of junk. I didn't have to, being just a reporter, but the other kids had to carry a lot of junk. T-10 canopies, 5,000 jumpers, I think it was. Here's a picture of the jumper in front of me going out of the 119. And we had a cleared area to land, but they had a little unfrozen area on one side, a little lake. So just to play it safe, they jumped us in the trees on the opposite side. I designed the Fairbanks Club patch, so I put a copy in here. That's the last copy I have left. And this is a picture of Nome. I used to be a diver, and I spent one whole summer diving on a broken gold dredge between Anvil Mountain and Nome. And I put a picture of the Diomedes here, Big Diomede and Little Diomede. This is Russian and this is United States. There's 2 miles difference between our two countries. And they'll probably still do it, not Wien, Alaska, but other airlines. The airlines used to give you a certificate when you passed over the Arctic Circle. We used to use the old DC-3s that pull the airplane up and stall it out and says, look, we just bumped into the Arctic Circle. And this was on June 30th, 1954, going to Kotzebue on my way to Nome on a diving job. This is a picture of the gold dredge that I spent that particular summer diving on. There's people rigging on the rigging on the gantry. And this is hard hat stuff. I built a little stage, and me coming up and making a dive. Stuff on Alaska, daring jumper stage plane after landing on a river bar, and that was Jack Long, an ex-smoke jumper. He borrowed my rig. He jumped in, and using a block and tackle, he pulled a Super Cub up on the bank, belonged to Dick McIntyre. And with several articles on Senator Boggs was lost in an airplane up there many years ago, and Don Johns was the pilot who used to jump with us, and we never did find him. Here's a picture of the bank in Fairbanks on a postcard, a tourist postcard. Here it is 53 above the summertime, and the same picture in the wintertime, 54 below zero. Had to register up here. And here's an article by George King over at Boundary. He made the first parachute jump in Alaska in 1916. Here's a map of Alaska map showing the Tanana River and the Chena River and the little town of Fairbanks. A very improbable place for a town, of course, but it was a mining camp like all the others. And here's the pictures of the Chena River, Fairbanks, the main street of Fairbanks. Here's the university in the old days. They've rebuilt it into a very modern university. But we were jumping on this field in front of the university building when they were writing up the state constitution, and a guy came out and said, would you mind jumping somewhere else? We're trying to draw up a state constitution, and you're distracting. Here's a picture taken from the Alaska Railroad. It's only 400 miles long, but it takes all day in the wintertime because they keep running into moose. This is a little more modern in Alaska. This was at pump station number 1. Milt and I were both up there building the Alaska pipeline for Fluor, and on the bicentennial, 4th of July, 1976, Alyeska furnished 4 of us jumpers with a helicopter to jump from. This is a picture of me standing alongside my old shitty D9 I used to run. And title is CS number 1 operator's life hangs by the parachute ripcord. But here is a counting of the exhibition jump we made at pump station 1, and a handwritten note somebody had written in the bottom, ice for the crowd was taken from frozen lakes in the ponds. And of course that was July 4th at Prudhoe Bay. Spent 2 years in the Arctic building the pipeline, and here are those of us who made the jumps up here. And here's where the pig went into the pipe, the first oil coming down the pipeline. I was working nights running the power plant by then, but this is me. I stayed up primarily because I could see what the girls looked like that came up with reporters from down at Civilization. And here's an article out of the Fairbanks News Miner. This is 1985. I try to get up there about every 4 or 5 years. Just talking about jumping in general. And here's Steve Kelly, a friend of mine who helped build the pipeline. He works construction every summer up in Fairbanks. He's a true snowbird. He goes back and jumps in his home state of Arizona about Thanksgiving and spends his winters down in Central America. Here's some of my old cards, the Operating Engineers Union and Fluor and pipeline orientation, those types of ideas. About 3 pages of pictures taken at Prudhoe Bay because I spent a couple of years there. I thought I should keep some kind of remembrance. Here's myself, one of the other jumpers, jumping July 4th, 1976 at Prudhoe. Here is a picture of a sign that says Prudhoe National Forest, and it consists of 4 pine trees painted on a sheet of plywood. There are no trees in 50 miles. Here's a cat train dragging materials across the ice, and these following pictures are barges frozen in. They won't move until the following year when the ice goes out. These are all taken at pump station number 1. Here goes the road to the airport or to the pump station. So the pipeline starts right at pump 1, runs 800 miles down to the ocean at Valdez. The sun goes below the horizon the day before Thanksgiving, comes back up above the horizon on Alaska. We go to B, the Bahamas. This was the Daring Game we shot for Ivan Tors. It was starring Lloyd Bridges, just another typical sea hunt. And due to problems and complications, we were down there 3 months doing about 3 weeks worth of work. And this shows Jim Hughes and Milt Flatt and one of the other jumpers flying around with a pair of scuba equipment on. This was the insignia of Lloyd Bridges' company in the film. Okay, this is the crew: Dave Burt, Jim Hughes, Lloyd Bridges, myself, George Speakman, Milt Flatt, and Gary Patmore is around there someplace, but not in the photo. This is the type of shot that was taken from my film footage, showing 4 heroes in parascuba gear jumping in to save some people. The aircraft was a Chase, a 122. We actually had to get 2 of them. The first one was lost. It crashed in the ocean, and this pilot and 3 other pilots perished with it. The crew here: George Speakman, myself, Gary Patmore, Jim Hughes, Milt Flatt, and Big Jerry Hemming. Dropping a 2-man submarine. There's an extraction chute just out of frame to the right, pulling it out on a pallet, and this shot is taken from the inside, showing a two-man submarine. We also dropped an underwater inflatable habitat and various equipment. You probably can't see these pictures, but some of them show our aircraft. There's our DC-3 and a 122 and a Grumman Goose and the AP-6 camera plane, and putting equipment on in Bimini, Milt Platt, Gary Patmore, Jim Hughes, Bobby Johnson, and Gary Patmore. Gary Hemming did most of our rigging work at night for us. This daring game equipment stuff here is the big doors taken off the C-47, and here's our hero crew all lined up with gear on, and me in the ocean waiting to be picked up. I had the helmet camera on, so they picked me up first to make sure the film didn't get wet. Jobs like we don't get enough of. The title I put there, putting parachutes on Marie Gomez, who was one of the heroines in the movie. We had to preliminary wash of our canopies with limited amount of water at Bimini to bring them back to the mainland and wash them again. And Bobby Johnson and Jerry Hemming would dry them out, repack them. We'd take them off the table as soon as they put them on, about 6 in the morning, and go out and repeat it all over again. Milt Platt had a capo release giveaway when he cleared the safety, dropped him in about 300 feet, put him in the hospital 3 or 4 days, but he got it, finished the film, and fortunately our tanks were only fiberglass. Here we are sitting at one of the clubs in the Bahamas there, myself and a school teacher from Connecticut, Dave Burt, and hero in our commercial, what was your name? Cynthia Williams, and J. Barry Heron, our photographer, and here we are working hard in the Bahamas. I can't quite figure how come Milt's got his picture in my scrapbooks more than I have, but this is in the Bahamas. This is the second Kodak commercial. Shot it 5 years after the first one, and here's Milt Platt, J. Barry Heron, myself, Jim Hughes, and I don't know who this is, and Dave Burt. Jim, Milt, myself, taken in front of this golf course. We jumped right here on the golf course. I made one water jump out there in that real pretty clear water just offshore. From B, like in Bahamas, to C, like in Canada. Now this is August 1958, U.S. team tryout, and so when they spell my name correctly, I keep the copy and put it in this kind of folder. At the tryouts in 58, I made a water jump, among other things. Here's Lou Vincent, retired Navy test jumper. He was a judge, and the other judges, George and Lucienne Vandermeers, came from France, and skydivers pass a baton in midair. It may not sound like much now, but this is the first one made in the Western Hemisphere. Jim Hoffman and Lyle Hoffman and Jim Pearson made it. It was right up in the Parachutist magazine just about a month ago about it. Canada later, this was the eastern part of Canada, actually the French section in Quebec, and this is 1966, and we shot a Coca-Cola commercial, and we got a special citation, and I carried the free fall camera. We shot it black and white at a place called St. Andre Avalon, and they said, well, we don't have too much color television, we'll just settle for black and white. A year later, we saw it at a Coca-Cola convention in Miami, and they wished they had shot it in color. This card is the only thing that I have as a souvenir from a week I spent shooting at Hawaii 5-0, and it's signed by Jack Lord and the producer and the director. They also gave me about 3 different bottles of booze that I couldn't put in my scrapbook. In my home state, I didn't do any real work jumping there except jumping fairs. Here's the Ionia Fair. And this says enclosed are 2 copies of your contract covering your appearance here. Kindly sign and return both copies. Ionia is second only to the State Fair in Michigan in size, and this is August 1953. But every time I would go through town, they would write something about me. Ripcord film expert here, Rose Bowl parachutist grew up here, shooters jumped from the Gold Wax, swim to shore. And I have about 3 pages of this stuff. From Michigan, alphabetically we go to Mexico, and this particular thing was a jump meet, and this was Oaxtepec, which was about 50 miles southeast of Mexico City. Jim Hughes and I also attended their first Mexican International, and that was at Fidel Fiesta, the evening beach north of Acapulco. Here are the Mexican jumpers here, and here's some of us gringos, Kenny Voss, myself, Pete Garrity, Bob Johnson, and Hector Nunez. And I took a camera down there, wasn't much to film, but I burned up some film anyway. This was the first Mexican Nationals. This is one held in Acapulco, and Jim Hughes and I went down there to win their baton passing event. We figured we would, and we did. They would continuously put things in their jump meets that they didn't know how to do. They'd read our magazine, say, hey, that's what we'll try. This is in Ensenada. We jumped into Bahia de Todos Santos, the Bay of All Saints, for the Rooster Tail boat races down there. And Nico Saad used to ride his kite, owns half the town down there now. He sponsored our organization, and we had Bobby Henry and Jim Render, and I can't think of everyone. I do remember that a lot of the girlfriends went downtown and ate, got some bad water, and they all got sick. They all thought they were pregnant, and nobody was laughing for about a week or so. This is when we jumped Caliente Racetrack in Tijuana, and that was 1970. We landed right in front of the building and right by the finished wire, but the track photographer took the picture from the grandstand towards the middle of the track. It looked like you're jumping in an open area instead of a very congested area. We almost had to land on the edge of the roof. We had to clear it within about 10 feet to make the landing on the track. From M in Mexico to P as in Philippines. And the Mexican government sponsored this in a aviation week in 1971. We took a jump team over there, myself and Dave Laurenti, Susie Jorns and Clarice Garrison, Dave Hurt and Lunas, Steve Yonka. And we jumped all around the country for a week, and we had a week R&R. And Charles Lindbergh was living over there by that time, and he watched us perform. The last act at the air show at Manila International Airport, I was flying by under a Billjet Ranger, wearing a harness with smoke and flag but no parachute, and the helicopter stopped and we crashed. It would have killed a mere mortal, but we hit very hard. It broke the tail boom off the helicopter and the skid and the door, and it screwed up my knee, which bothered me, restricted my jumping for several years. This is at Manila International Airport. I'm shaking hands with Imelda Marcos, the president's wife. I don't care how many pairs of shoes she has, but she had her own Huey helicopter parked right there. And I have several more pages. This is our last topic in this scrapbook. This is Susie Jones and Clarice Garrison. Now Clarice, Reiner. Okay, they're presenting the plaque to President Marcos there. Susie is living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Clarice, at least for a while now, is living in Kentucky. There's Steve Yonder, our balloonist, who later took up parachuting and manufacturing parachutes at one of the many banquets we had. And this colonel was in charge of the Manila International Airport. Here's our whole crew with a Philippine movie star and the flag.
In a historic event, Bob Sinclair is attempting to start the bus. Hallelujah, brother. We're going to continue this in just a few minutes. But at least it's all what is called front of the a few great moments in life. You can actually see Bob Sinclair's bus moving. It's actually moving. Well, so much for trees. But there is a bus that's actually moving. Most of you have never seen that. Honest, you haven't. Now you're going to try to turn it around. Hear that shift? There it goes. That's fantastic. I think that's the furthest it's ever driven without stopping. We're going to stop this for a minute. We're back. He's actually got it in reverse. We're doing this just so we have enough light to film the inside, which has never, ever been done before. Geraldo did Al Capone's vault. We're going to do Bob Sinclair's bust. Entrance to the den of iniquity. And there is a lady who is about trying to be enticed. He's trying to get her in. Is he going to succeed? I don't know. He looks friendly. He may, no, he must have done something. We are filming, Sinclair. Come on in. I will probably trip and break my neck getting into this thing. Here he is, folks, the owner of the bus. I think he wants me to shoot the bus.
It used to be a portable parachute school. You know, sort of whatever.
We're going to try to get a little bit different view here. Hold on, folks. Folks, again, in Bob Sinclair's ticket, you notice that everything is there. May not be operational, but that's the same with Bob Sinclair.
I'm talking about that sign back there, not the one up top of the street. Cash, gas, ask for gas. No one rides for free.
Oh, my goodness. Let that be a warning to you neophytes.
Parachutes under the table and under the bed. And a lot of shelves. Have a propane refrigerator behind the door. Have a shower and a trapper back there, just about this thick. Have a evaporated rotary cooler on the roof. A 55-gallon water barrel. Have a 50-gallon propane tank. Have 80 gallons usable gasoline. Have RV batteries. Have a PA system under the hood, the one we used to use to talk to our students. Sounds like this. Make a left turn, wondering why.
Now I think we had better go see the Den of Iniquity. Dark, I told you so.
Have a one-burner stove for heating, for cooking. Got more head bar. Oh, you moved it too soon. No, I don't have to stay away. That's good enough, most likely.
For you people who don't know any better, that is not the place to be. Last word of warning, after a few years of association.
Too bad you can't read the title. Here I have Johnny Carson, and the title says, "The famous television personality and entertainment star Bob Sinclair with Janice what's his name at the Tonight Show after 6 or 7 delays."
Sinclair?
Oh. Can't get me, it's too bad.
Okay, I cannot get you here, it's too dark.
Yeah.
I know I'm just a neophyte, and I really have, under your instructions, let me tell you.
I know, you're screwing up the last of the film. Privacy cable comes down here, and I unfortunately ran into a bridge abutment up in northern part of California a couple weeks ago. Got a little repair work on it. I pulled it heavy enough to hold 3 dancing girls as long as they don't wear too much clothing. That ought to complete your state note, and I ought to think we're about out. I hope.
Looks like a death board to me.